living wage. Africans want to perform work which they are capable of doing, and not work which the government declares them to be capable of. We want to be allowed to live where we obtain work, and not be endorsed out of an area because we were not born there. We want to be allowed and not to be obliged to live in rented houses which we can never call our own. We want to be part of the general population and not confined to living in our ghettos. African men want to have their wives and children to live with them where they work, and not to be forced into an unnatural existence in men's hostels. Our women want to be with their men folk and not to be left permanently widowed in the reserve. We want to be allowed out after 11 o'clock at night and not to be confined to our rooms like little children. We want to be allowed to travel in our own country and to seek work where we want to, and not where the Labor Bureau tells us to. We want a just share in the whole of South Africa. We want security and a stake in society. Above all, my Lord, we want equal political rights, because without them, our disabilities will be permanent. I know this sounds revolutionary to the white in this country, because the majority of voters will be Africans. This makes the white man fear democracy. But this fear cannot be allowed to stand in the way of the only solution which will guarantee racial harmony and freedom for all. It is not true that the enfranchisement of all will result in racial domination. Political division based on color is entirely artificial. And when it disappears, so will the domination of one color group by another. The ANC has spent half a century fighting against racialism. When it triumphs, as it certainly must, it will not change that policy. This then is what the ANC is fighting. Our struggle is a truly national one. It is a struggle of the African people, inspired by our own suffering and our own experience. It is a struggle for the right to live. During my lifetime, I have dedicated my life to this struggle of the African people. I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the idea of a democratic and free society in which all persons will live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an idea for which I hope to live for and to see realized. But my Lord, if it needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die.
Well, hello. I'm the crazy old man, also known as Lee, also known as many other things. And this is, I call it Malcolm, Martin, Nelson, and the crazy old man. I throw my name in there because I'm going to do some talking. And you just heard a speech by Nelson Mandela. I believe he said that in the courtroom before he went to prison. Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X made a difference. The three of them were great men. And I thank God that He gave us them, even though Malcolm and Martin died at young ages. When they were coming together, if they would have lived, I think it would have done a lot more for race relations. Malcolm X, for many years, was pretty much anti-white. He was segregationist. Then he realized he was wrong. And he and Martin Luther King started talking. And that may be another reason why they're both dead. Because the FBI knew that if they got together, they would do a lot more in bringing blacks and whites together. Right now, in fact, I'm running a show about the three of them. I Say What? Show. And I have speeches and things about them. And it's going to go on probably all day tomorrow, maybe into the morning for Tuesday morning. I want to say a few things. Not just about the three of them, but about their dream. And my dream. Because their dream hasn't been fulfilled yet. It was close. Then all of a sudden the Republicans and the Tea Party decided, we don't like black folks. We're going to take away their vote. To me, first of all, we're all equals in God's eyes. I'm not going to say all men were created equal. When our country became a country, or was becoming a country, Bill of Rights said all men are created equal. And they meant all white men are created equal. Do not include women or children or people of color. They didn't consider people of color as human. But over the years, thanks to Martin Luther King and Malcolm X too, our country started coming out of apartheid. Didn't make it, but it was getting there. When Obama was elected, I was thinking, damn, we're going to get together. Obama's going to bring the blacks and whites together. But he hasn't done that. In fact, since he was elected, I feel racism has gotten worse. I see it just about every day. And when you listen to Fox News and many of the Republicans, you realize that they don't like black folks. Of course, black folks don't like them, but that's because they don't like black folks. I've heard people say that a lot of blacks are bigoted against the whites. They have a right to be bigoted against the whites for what has been done to them. Probably as much of a right as the Native Americans do. I mean, the Native Americans were just about wiped off the face of the earth. Down south of the border, they survived better than up here because they pretty well mixed with the whites. The Europeans that went down there weren't as bad as Europeans that came up here. Let me give you a little history. Many thousands of years ago, the Alaska and what's now Russia were attached. The Bering Strait wasn't there. And people in Mongolia came over through there and settled all the way down and into South America and everything. There were over 12 million Native Americans in what's now the United States. Now there's about 250,000. Tell me that wasn't a genocide. They should have reparations because they never got back on their feet. Because they were dragged down. They were lied to. That's going to be another story. I'll probably talk about that in the future. But now, because of the passing of Nelson Mandela, we lost a man who showed the world that even though he went through all he did and his people went through all they did, he could forgive and not forget, but forgive. Now, our country was saying that he was a terrorist. Well, you're not a terrorist when you're fighting to get your land back. I mean, South Africa had a white minority that ran things. They didn't mind killing black people. They enjoyed it. And when Mandela and his people got control of the government, they really didn't get control of the country. They had to make a lot of deals. Diamond mines stayed with the rich folks. The rich folks kept everything that they had. They weren't kicked out. And the black folks didn't get anything more than what they had. In fact, apartheid seems to still exist, as it does here, and as it does in Palestine and in Israel. To me, first of all, the United States should not be supporting Israel until they get their settlements out of Palestine, and they should. I mean, Palestine is split now. They should make it so that Gaza and the West Bank are connected somewhere. Probably on the Egyptian side. Jerusalem should become a city-state, sort of like the Vatican. But since it's a holy city to the Christians, the Jews, and the Muslims. So the city should be run by the three of them together, by the religious leaders. In the United States, well, let me say this. About 32 years ago, I was a total drunk. I was in a bad marriage. I had a great future if it weren't for the drunk. In fact, I was offered a partnership in a CPA firm, and today I'd probably be making more than $250,000, probably even $500,000 a year. But I make about $12,000 a year, a little bit more, and I'm happier than I would have been if I would have taken a partnership, I think. I left the Detroit suburbs and went into the inner city. I met a woman. She was a dancer. And beautiful black woman. She looked like Donna Summers. We fell in love. And as soon as I met her, I decided I was going to get out of my marriage. And I told the wife, I'm leaving. Anyway, she wasn't too happy about the idea. Even though I spent 5 years being a drunk, hoping that she'd kick me out, but she wouldn't kick me out. And I ended up leaving her and moving in and getting married, living in the inner city. I lived in some of the most dangerous areas of Detroit. For about 6 months until I got on my feet, she supported me. And the first 5 years of our marriage was fantastic. We had a lot of problems with white people. When I made the move, I lost every white friend I had except maybe 2. And I didn't care. Then I saw what it was really like to be black. Sure, there's a few black folks out there that made the money. Dave Bing, our mayor, is one of them. Now, I call Detroit Michigan's Gaza Strip. What the state has done is they've ripped off the cities that are mostly black and took over. They have been bringing in charter schools. And the charter schools are mainly for the kids that really have a chance. But you got about 200,000 kids in Detroit that are now going to graduate from high school. Detroit is the poorest city when it comes to the people in the country. And at many times it was the roughest. When I came to the Detroit area, it was 1965. I was in the suburbs, doing good. And when I walked away from everything, I was doing better. I was finally happy. And I got to the point where I was told by a friend of mine that I was a bigot. I was shocked. What do you mean? You're my best friend and you're black. He said, that's not what I mean. You don't like white people. I stopped and thought about it. It was true. I turn against my race. In fact, now I don't consider it my race. My friends are mostly black. A lot of them are Arabic. And they sort of adopted me. I had a guy tell me, he said, you know, you're blacker than I am. And I've been accepted. And I have more friends now than I ever did. Many of them are drug addicts. Many of them are just a little bit on the crooked side. Many of the women are prostitutes. But they're good people. I'm not going to sit here and blame white folks for everything. I want to, but I'm not going to. But our city was taken over by the Tea Party. I mentioned that before in my last editorial. I was cussing up a storm on that one. But, like I say, things have gotten worse for the blacks instead of better. Especially with because of the Tea Party and the Republican Party. Now, I heard one of the Republicans saying how we used to have the support of the blacks. They did. When the Republican Party started, the blacks were Republicans. And the Democrats were the bigots. Republicans, black and white, had big problems in the South. But then, things started to change. All through my lifetime, things were changing. In fact, I used to be a Republican. Then I realized that we lost our party. Sort of like we were losing our country. The party was taken over by big business. The party was originally, when I got into accounting a few hundred years ago, it was 1969 or 70, I got into accounting. Republican Party was mainly a small business. Large corporations, most of their people were Republicans too, but corporations weren't trying to wipe out the little guy, which they're doing now. Walmart has run a lot of small businesses out of business. The Republican Party is no longer the party for small business. Actually, at the time, the Democrats were still the bigoted ones, even though blacks were mostly Democrats. It was also had a lot of bigots in it from the South. The South still was a Jim Crow South, and now it's back to being a Jim Crow South. Back parts of the North are Jim Crow South. Michigan is getting more and more Jim Crow. The whites and blacks need to get together. Get rid of the bigotry. I got a feeling that the Republican Party, they're screwing up so bad that they're on their way out. They're fighting hard to stay. They're rigging the elections so that it'll be in their favor. And Bush was elected. There was a little hanky-panky done by his brother down in Florida. And I do believe that Bush, if the elections weren't rigged, Bush would have lost. A lot of times in our country, presidents have committed treason and gotten away with it. All the way back to maybe the 1930s, maybe even before that. I think before that. Our forefathers started a country with a great idea. Like I say, they weren't including blacks. Blacks were still slaves when it started. When they got rid of slavery, it wasn't because they liked the blacks. In fact, they didn't want to give the blacks the right to vote. Anyway, I'm going to do Malcolm X's last speech.
Distinguished guests, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, friends and enemies. I want to point out first that I'm very happy to be here this evening, and I'm thankful for the invitation to come here to Detroit this evening. I was in a house last night that was on my own, but it didn't destroy all my clothes at all, but you know what happens when fire dashes through. They get smoky. The only thing I could get my hands on before leaving was what I have on now. And it isn't something that made me lose confidence in what I'm doing, because my wife understands, and I have children from this size on down, and even in their young age, they understand. I think they would rather have a father or a brother or whatever the situation may be, who will take a stand in the face of any kind of reaction from narrow-minded people, rather than to compromise and later on have to grow up in shame and in disgrace. So I just ask you to excuse my appearance. I don't normally come out in front of people without a shirt and a tie. I guess that's somewhat a holdover from the Black Muslim movement, which I was in. And that's one of the good aspects of that movement. It teaches you to be very careful and conscious of how you look, which is a positive contribution on their part. But that positive contribution on their part is greatly offset by too many other liabilities. Before I get involved in anything nowadays, I have to straighten out my own position, and which is clear. I am not a racist in any form whatsoever. I don't believe in any form of racism. I don't believe in any form of discrimination or segregation. I believe in Islam. I'm a Muslim, and there's nothing wrong with being a Muslim. Nothing wrong with the religion of Islam. That just teaches us to believe in Allah as the God, and those of you who are Christians probably believe in the same God. Because I think you believe in the God who created the universe, and that's the one we believe in, the one who created the universe. The only difference being, you call him God, and we call him Allah. Jews call him Jehovah. If you could understand Hebrew, you'd probably call him Jehovah too. If you could understand Arabic, you'd probably call him Allah. But since the white man, your friend, took your language away from you during slavery, the only language you know is his language, your friend's language. So you call for the same God he calls for. When he's putting a rope around your neck, you call for God, and he calls for God. And you wonder why the one you call on never answers you. when I was in the black Muslim movement, they didn't have the real religion of Islam in that movement. It was something else. But the real religion of Islam doesn't teach anyone to judge another human being by the color of his skin. The yardstick that is used by the Muslim to measure another man is not the man's color, but the man's deeds, the man's conscious behavior, the man's intention. And when you use that as a standard of measurement or judgment, you never go wrong. But when you just judge a man because of the color of his skin, then you're committing a crime, because that's the worst kind of judgment. If you judge him just because he was a Jew, that's not as bad as judging him because he's black. Because a Jew can hide his religion. He can say he's something else, in which a lot of them do that. They say they're something else. But the black man can't hide. When they start indicting us because of our color, that means we're indicted before we're born, which is the worst kind of crime that can be committed. Elijah Muhammad had taught us that the white man could not enter into Mecca in Arabia, and all of us who followed him, we believed it. And he said the reason he couldn't enter was because he's white and inherently evil, and it's impossible to change him. And the only thing that would change him is Islam, and he can't accept Islam because by nature he's evil. And therefore, by not being able to accept Islam and become a Muslim, he could never enter Mecca. And this is how he taught us. And, and so when I got over there and went to Mecca and saw these people who blonde and blue-eyed and pale skin and all those things, I said, well, but I watched them closely, and I noticed that there was, though they were white, and they would call themselves white, there was a difference between them and the white one over here. And that basic difference was this. In Asia or the Arab world or in Africa, where the Muslims are, if you find one who says he's white, all he's doing is using an adjective to describe something that's incidental about him, one of his incidental characteristics. So there's nothing else to it. He's just white. But when you get the white man over here in America and he says he's white, he means something else. You can listen to the sound of his voice when he says he's white. He means he's boss. That's right. That's what white means in this language. You know the expression free, white, and 21. He made that up. He's letting you know all of them mean the same. White means free, boss. He's up there. So that when he says he's white, he has a little different sound in his voice. And I know you know what I'm talking about. Despite the fact that I saw that Islam was a religion of brotherhood, I also had to face reality. And when I got back into this American society, I'm not in a society that practices brotherhood. I'm in a society that might preach it on Sunday, but they don't practice it on no day, on any day. And so since I could see that America itself is a society where there is no brotherhood, and that this society is controlled primarily by racists and segregationists, and it is, this is a society whose government doesn't hesitate to inflict the most brutal form of punishment and oppression upon dark-skinned people all over the world. To wit, right now, what's going on in and around Saigon and Hanoi, and in the Congo and in elsewhere. They are violent when their interests are at stake. But all of that violence that they display at the international level, when you and I want just a little bit of freedom, we're supposed to be nonviolent. They're violent. They're violent in Korea. They're violent in Germany. They're violent in the South Pacific. They're violent in Cuba. They're violent wherever they go. But when it comes time for you and me to protect ourselves against lynchers, they tell us to be nonviolent. We should defend ourselves. And when I say that we should defend ourselves against the violence of others, they use their press skillfully to make the world think that I'm calling on violence, period. And I wouldn't call on anybody to be violent without a cause. But I think the black man in this country, above and beyond people all over the world, will be more justified when he stands up and starts to protect himself, no matter how many necks he has to break and heads he has to crack. I saw in the paper where on the television where they took this black woman down in Selma, Alabama, and knocked her right down on the ground, dragging her down the street. You saw it. You're trying to pretend like you didn't see it because you knew you should have done something about it and didn't. It showed the sheriff and his henchmen throwing this black woman on the ground, and Negro men standing around doing nothing about it, saying, well, let's overcome them with our capacity to love. What kind of phrase is that? Overcome them with our capacity to love. And then it disgraces the rest of us because all over the world the picture is flashed showing a black woman with some white brutes with their knees on her, holding her down, and full-grown black men standing around watching it. Why, you are lucky they let you stay on earth, much less stay in the country. When I saw it, I dispatched a wire to Rockwell. Rockwell was one of the agitators down there. This Lincoln Rockwell. And the wire said, in essence, that this is to warn him that I am no longer held in check from fighting white supremacists by Elijah Muhammad's separatist black Muslim movement. And that if Rockwell's presence in Alabama causes harm to come to Dr. King or any other black person in Alabama who's doing nothing other than trying to enjoy their rights, then Rockwell and his Ku Klux Klan friends would be met with maximum retaliation from those of us who are not handcuffed by this nonviolent philosophy. And I haven't heard from Rockwell since. As he has been doing all along. If a man speaks French, you can't speak to him in German. If he speaks Swahili, you can't communicate with him in Chinese. You have to find out what does this man speak. And once you know his language, then you speak his language. And he'll have a point. There'll be some dialogue, some communication, and some understanding of individuals. And you got in this country long enough to know the leaders, the Klan speak. That's what you have to do. Most of us are human. Start learning a new language. Learn a language. And then they come up and do things. And they will get the point. There will be a dialogue. There will be some communication. And I'm quite certain there will then be some understanding. Why? Because the Klan is a cowardly outfit. They have perfected the art of making Negroes be afraid. And as long as the Negro's afraid, the Klan is safe. But the Klan itself is coward. They never come, one of them never come after one of you. They all come together. Sure, they're scared of you. And you sit there when they put the rope around your neck saying, forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do. As long as they've been doing it, they're experts at it. They know what they're doing. No, since the federal government has shown that it isn't going to do anything about it, but talk, then it is a duty. It's your and my duty as men, as human beings. It's our duty to our people to organize ourselves. And let the government know that if they don't stop that Klan, we'll stop it ourselves. And then you'll see the government start doing something about it. But don't ever think that they're going to do it just on some kind of morality basis. No. We only mean vigorous action in self-defense. And that vigorous action, we feel, we're justified in initiating by any means necessary. And when we say this, the press calls us racists in reverse. With skillful manipulating of the press, they're able to make the victim look like the criminal and the criminal look like the victim. Right now, when in New York, we had a couple cases where police grabbed the brother and beat him unmercifully and then charged him with assaulting them. They use the press to make it look like he's the criminal and they're the victim. This is how they do it. And if you study how they do it here, then you'll know how they do it over here. It's the same game going all the time. And if you and I don't awaken and see what this man is doing to us, then it'll be too late. They may have the gas ovens already built before you realize that they're hot.
Okay. I'm going back on, Columbus Day. There is no reason for the United States to honor Columbus. First of all, he got here by mistake. He was going to India. That's why the Indians are called Indians. He thought he was in India. Didn't know. But then he saw these people. And like I say, he called them Indians. Their skin was red. Now, on the way over here, they had sheep on the ships so they could have lamb for food. Now, they had intercourse with the sheep, and they got syphilis. That's how syphilis started. Then they come over here and then they start raping the natives and raping and killing the women, and then they killed a bunch of the men. But they gave the women syphilis. That's the first time that any disease got over here. All the diseases were brought over here by the white folks. Anyway, he decided that, boy, we got some good slaves here. Told everybody when he got back, yeah, go over to where I was, because they got a lot of people there that could be great slaves. The ones that aren't slaves, we can kill them. They got some beautiful land over there. Of course, he didn't make it to the mainland. He made it to the islands. Many years before Columbus, Leif Erikson came here. I think it was in the 6th century, somewhere in the 500s. And he was from Norway area, and I guess he didn't do that much when he came over here. Ended up going back. Even before him, the Chinese came here. And another thing, the Chinese were near where Columbus was. They used these big stones for anchors, and they found some of them. And they knew they weren't the regular stones in the area. And anyway, at another point, Africans came here. Africans mixed with the Indians. Africans were here a long before the white folks got here. And the white folks were trying to get rid of the Indians. Actually, the original Thanksgiving was to celebrate an Indian massacre. The Indians saved the settlers' lives, taught them how to survive, and they were paid by having their land stolen, having genocide. They had a cholera epidemic, and they took the blankets and instead of burning them, they decided, let's give them to the Indians, and they can get cholera. So they wiped out quite a few that way. And of course, they had better weapons, so you had the massacres. And you look at the old cowboy and Indian stories, and you got the Indians scalping people. Scalping was started by the white people. What they did was they had a bounty on Indians, and they would scalp them to prove that they got themselves an Indian. And then they'd collect money for the scalp. So the Indians were thinking, hey, they do that to us, why don't we do it to them? All the Westerns and everything, they showed the Indians as the bad guys. The thing is that the bad guys were the white folks stealing the Indians' land, hunting the buffalo, and wiping them out. Then they moved the Indians to reservations where it was very hard to live. And to me, another thing too is that the dear old Christians came in here, and they made the Indian kids go to Christian schools, and they actually stole the kids from their parents, put them in private schools. A lot of it was up in Canada. The Canadians were bad folks too, and they still are. And the white folks here are still bad. The Christians pretty much are bad. You know, what gets me is how the Christians look down on all other religions. I mean, I'm willing to bet that they think God is a Christian. Well, they figure that Christ was God's kid. And some of them think of him as God. Now, it seems to me that God says, "Thou shalt not have any other God but me," and yet they're saying Christ is the Son of God, and they worship Christ, in many cases, more than they worship God. And they say if you aren't a Christian, you're going to hell. Probably most of the Christians I've seen are the ones that are going to hell because of the way they treat other religions. God made us. We all started off from the same place. All started with one man and two women. Been proven by DNA. Started in Africa. And the human race was originally black. But then as it spread, it changed. And Europeans' skin lightened. And in Asia, they went more towards yellow skin, and some of them red skin, especially in Mongolia. The Indians are related to the Asians, and they're from Asia originally. And the slant eyes in China and what used to be called Oriental, now called Asian, even though a lot of Asians aren't Oriental. The slant eyes had something to do with the sun, I think. Anyway, what I'm trying to get through to you people is that we're all brothers and sisters, cousins, aunts and uncles, whatever. We're all related. There's just one race out there. That's the human race. When I first got going on the internet, I mean, I was around before television, so I'm old. But I did a thing, my first thing on the internet was what I called the human rainbow. And it was to show the different colors. I had a family from India, and there were light-skinned people, dark-skinned people, a couple white people in there. I saw a picture of Geraldo Rivera's family, and I wanted to use that. But it was on television. I didn't have, and I asked Geraldo to send it to me, send me a copy of it. His family was a rainbow. Excuse me. Anyway, my girlfriend told me that I should have music as a background for these. And I had picked a saxophone thing. It's 3 hours of sax, called romantic sax. I figured that'd be a great background for this. But I forgot. Another part of old age, you forget things occasionally. Of course, sometimes you want to forget things. You forget them on purpose and say, I'm old, it's not my fault. Leave me alone. I'm not that bad off yet, but getting close. Anyway, I'm also forgetting what I said. But I'm old. It's not my fault. Anyway, I have a dream. Oh, that's right. I was talking about that essay I did. And I had pictures from people, all different colors. I had a picture of a classroom in South America. It showed the rainbow. And what do they call them? The people that study humans. Anthropologists, I think. That's what they are. There's an anthropologist that said in 500 years it'll be back to one race. Well, it always has been one race. Just different colors. And then they started mixing. And they say they're going to mix more. You see a lot more mixed couples now. They're showing it on television a lot. It's like, what's that? It's Booville, Alabama. They got a black mayor. He's going to be marrying a white woman. They got a white lawyer who's going to be getting together with this black woman. The blacks and the whites are mixing. I think that's overstated. I do understand, though, that in some parts of the South it is getting better. It's just getting worse up north. But Detroit is really a southern city. Most of the people I know are from the South. Maybe second generation Detroiters. And my wife and I used to go to family reunions. And we went down to North Carolina first. Can't remember the name of the city. But there were a lot of mixed couples there. And nobody looked at us dirty or anything. Then we went to South Carolina. Orangeburg, I think it was. And we got the dirty looks from the black people. White people didn't seem to care. Now here in Detroit, the white people didn't like it. We had very few problems with blacks. In fact, I was accepted in the black community with no problems. And yet blacks get in the white community and they have the N-word on their garage doors and stuff. And this was in the 70s. And in the 80s, I left the wife in 81. That's when I got with wife number 2 and when I went into the black area. And we'd go to restaurants in the white areas. We'd have to check our food because every once in a while we'd find something in them that's not supposed to be there. We had a hard time getting served. Our son, he was lighter than me, came home one day and said, "Mama, am I black or am I white?" He went to an all-black private school. And there was one little girl in there that was mixed, and she was about the same shade as my son. Mama looks at him and says, "You're black." He looks at his arm and he looks at my arm, puts his arm next to mine and says, "Mama, if I'm black, Daddy's black." Because I was darker than him at the time. And I'm thinking, now what you gotta say, woman? Well, it's not too long after that in Michigan, they still didn't say that they were mixed race. But if the kid was more white than black as far as the looks, then they said the kid was white. To me, they should say mixed. The wife went to apply for a job. She was a cop for a while in Detroit, and she went to Oakland County and applied for a job as a jail guard. And we're going through I was with her when she was filling out the application. And it comes to the race. And it says white, black, Hispanic. I think they had a few other ones in there, Asian. And now Hispanic's not a race. But the reason that they brought Hispanic in was to cut down on the number of blacks in the census. Anyway, she said, what should I put down? Because she was Indian, white, and black. She was mostly black. But she had a grandfather that was white. She didn't know that. She kept seeing this guy in the picture, and they'd ask her mother about it. Her mother would change the subject. He was a great-grandfather. He was Irish. Red hair, very light skin. And so, finally, when we got together, her mother told her that you got some white in you. Her mother didn't care for white people. She loved me, but she always said that I wasn't white. And eventually she said I was black. But anyway, we'd go in the suburbs and we'd have problems. The first 5 years of our marriage, you just didn't, in the suburbs, you didn't see mixed couples. In the city, you didn't see that many of them either, but they were accepted in the city. And I'd go in the suburbs with girlfriends, and after the split up, and I was with black women, and get pulled over and everything. Be with my buddies and get pulled over by narco. And finally I said, why do we keep getting pulled over? Well, because one white guy with a bunch of black guys, that's a drug dealer. Funny thing is, one time that the cops came, we were already parked in front of a house, and one of the guys was going to get some money from his uncle. The cop came, they searched the car. It's funny because we had the guy in the passenger side had a joint in the ashtray. Cop saw the joint and he saw the look on my face. Don't worry about it. We're after crack. Grabbed the joint and started smoking it. And but turned out that the uncle was a drug dealer. But we were parked in front of the house. One thing you find out in the city is that one way to know it's a drug house is you got people parking 3 or 4 houses away and walking to the house. And nobody buys drugs by parking in front of the drug house. That's how you know it's a drug house. Anyway, I think I'm getting off the subject. My wife, when she talked on the phone, my ex-wife, she sounded like a white gal. In fact, her mother used to tell her, stop talking white. And she'd call about a job. And they say, come on in. We'll hire you. And she get there, oh, the job's taken. Because they didn't hire blacks back then. And so then she got contacted by the equal opportunity people, or Wire, and they recorded the phone call and recorded the conversation when she got there. They busted a few people for discrimination. But this discrimination's still there. I mean, in our city, I know damn well our unemployment rate's over 50%. I think I mentioned that 80% of our kids don't finish school because they learn more in the streets than they do in school. They don't give up on the school. The schools give up on them. Plus, our schools don't get the money that the suburban schools get. And they aren't going to. Like I said, they're getting the charter schools in there, and the charter schools aren't really any better than the other schools. Some of them are. But what they need to do is equally spend in all the schools so that the kids have a chance no matter what area they're in. They should get the same education. Also, they need to have free college. Free education all the way to college. Maybe go ahead and charge for master's and doctorate degrees. But through the bachelor degree, that should be, it used to be that way in California, but old Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was the son of a Nazi, stopped it. But that's what we need. Everybody needs the same chance in life, no matter who their parents are, no matter what their parents do. Some of the smartest kids I know are high school dropouts. But they give up on school. A lot of them go to selling drugs. Actually, people who make money in drugs are the ones that sell to the dealers and the kids. The only problem is a lot of those kids are going to get murdered. I have a girlfriend's son. He was like my own son. He was shot in a drive-by, and they used buckshot and a shotgun, and it was just to scare him, teach him a lesson. And then after he quit selling drugs, not long after he was shot in a drive-by, .357 Magnum, shot 9 times. He survived, but he's still in pain. Anyway, I'm going to play I Have a Dream. I've gone a little longer than I thought I was. In fact, I just decided at the last minute to do this Malcolm Martin. I gotta change the title. It's supposed to be Malcolm Martin and Nelson. Anyway, I'm going to do that. And I'm going to close it with I Have a Dream speech. And then after that, I'll say goodbye.
At this time, I have the honor to present to you the moral leader of our nation. I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
I am happy to join with a check. When the architects of our republic wrote the magnificent words of the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, they were signing a promissory note to which every American was to fall heir. This note was a promise that all men, yes, black men as well as white men, would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. It is obvious today that America has defaulted on this promissory note insofar as her citizens of color are concerned. Instead of honoring this sacred obligation, America has given the Negro people a bad check, a check which has come back marked insufficient funds. But we refuse to believe that the Bank of Justice is bankrupt. We refuse to believe that there are insufficient funds in the great vaults of opportunity of this nation. So we've come to cash this check, a check that will give us upon demand the riches of freedom and the security of justice. children. We must forever conduct our struggle on the high plane of dignity and discipline. We must not allow our creative protest to degenerate into physical violence. Again and again, we must rise to the majestic heights of meeting physical force with soul force. The marvelous new militancy which has engulfed the Negro community must not lead us to a distrust of all great people. For many of our white brothers, as evidenced by their presence here today, have come to realize that their destiny is harder without destiny. They have come to realize that their freedom is inextricably bound to our freedom. We cannot walk alone. And as we walk, we must make the pledge that we shall always march ahead. We cannot turn back. There are those who are asking the devotees of civil rights, when will you be satisfied? We can never be satisfied as long as the Negro is the victim of the unspeakable horrors of police brutality. We can never be satisfied as long as our body is heavy with the fatigue of travel, cannot gain lodging in the motels of the highways and the hotels of the cities. We cannot be satisfied as long as the Negro's basic mobility is from a smaller ghetto to a larger one. We can never be satisfied as long as our children are stripped of their selfhood and robbed of their dignity by signs stating for whites only. We cannot be satisfied as long as a Negro in Mississippi cannot vote and a Negro in New York believes he has nothing for which to vote. Like a mighty stream. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my poor little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today.
I was born in 1944. And I remember a little bit about Truman. But I remember quite a bit about Eisenhower. Kennedy was an excellent speaker. And look where it got him. When I was with Blog Talk, you were only allowed one show a day. But I had, you could only do one show a day, but I had 5 different shows, so I could do 5 shows really. But I had them, at one point I had 7 shows. I had a different show every day, 7 days a week. And they ran from an hour to 2 hours. Some of the ones I first started were up to 2 hours, and they were free. And then Blog Talk decided cut the free shows down to a half hour, and you paid twice of what you pay here, and you're only allowed I think 2 hours a day. And here for $20 you can, like I've got 2 shows running 24/7. Then my live shows, I run those. Sometimes they run 10 hours long on my news shows. Anyway, during Black History Month, I've played a lot of Black History. Then when I came here, there was a lot of Black History. And I was called the N-word a lot. But this year, all through February on the Say What show, I'm going to have Black History. And I'm going to have, I've probably got about a week's worth of Black History on my computer. And of course it's going to be repeating itself. And I'll still do these news shows. Probably get back to the music by then. I'm doing some comedy now. So anyway, that's what's happening. And I'm going to have to say goodbye. I got to go to bed. It's getting late again. And hell, it's 2 o'clock already. Oh, man. Why do I do this to me? This was only going to be about a 15, 20-minute show, and it's been over an hour and a half already. So, I'm going to close it. I want everybody to have a good day, good week, good month, good year. Most of all, I want a beautiful life. Thank you.